He's going to talk about You Define Your Culture, Dane Espegard.
This is the moment, tonight is the night. We'll fight till it's over, so we put our hands up like the ceiling can't hold us. Like the ceiling can't hold us.
I should have opened with a picture of my she-man dog dude, but I don't have that here for you, unfortunately. So this is where I was at last year, 764,263 at this event. And this year at 1.6, actually a little off, 1.69 million year to date. So a lot has changed within the last year. So I was asked a lot of different times over the course of the last couple days, you know, what was it? What was one or two or three things? Like what made the switch? What was the quantum leap from this to that? And when I went through it and I thought about what were the biggest things that had to do with this year, all of it fell under the banner of culture. And when I think about what culture is, see if I can figure out how to use this. There we go. A template, a roadmap for what decisions to make, how to feel, how to prepare, what's acceptable, and most importantly, how to act. So if we signed up to be a district manager, district leader, a lot of it wasn't just income opportunity, but it was also lifestyle. And I know for me, one of the things that I struggled with as a new manager was delegation. What I wanted to do was my way. And what culture does, it allows you to set up systems that aren't necessarily a tangible system, that when you leave your office, the same type of stuff is happening. Everybody's speaking the same language. It's been quoted as saying, that's what we do around here. And culture, to me, has been the biggest difference from last year to this year. And I shouldn't even say last year to this year. Culture's been the biggest difference from 2006 until this year. There's a few things about culture that I think are really important for everyone to understand before I get through and talk about what my path has been over the course of this last year. Number one is culture develops in every team, organization, and community. Whether or not you're deliberate about it and you're focused on, hey, here's what I'm going to build, it's going to form anyways. You know, I've got a younger brother that was a foster child that our family adopted, and he's had a lot of behavioral issues over the course of the last 4 or 5 years. And so last year was a freshman in high school, was borderline getting expelled, so my parents took him out and sent him to a boarding school, and same issues down at boarding school. And then this year he's at a different high school and things are great. And the reason is because there's a different culture at this school. There's no bullying. And so I asked him about it. He's a 15-year-old. I said, what's the difference? He goes, everything just feels different. And culture is the feel. It's the atmosphere. It's what does somebody get when they're in your office for 2 hours? If they came to a team meeting, they had conversations with everybody other than the district manager, what would they hear? Oftentimes, we think we know what the culture is in our business, but if we were to ask the people that actually make the culture, it's not in line. Culture also, like I said, it tells us how to act and what's acceptable. I think about sports teams and their fans. So I went to college at Wisconsin, and then I lived in Nebraska. Completely opposite ends in terms of what's acceptable behavior for a fan. At Wisconsin, we prided ourselves on being the biggest jerks possible. Most of the chants had to do with vulgarities, and if you had a young child, you wouldn't want to bring him to the game. And then at Nebraska, it was the complete opposite. They are classy fans. And it was interesting, the first game that I went to in Nebraska, I was sitting in the stands, and there were some fans that started to heckle an Iowa State fan, and then everyone around him was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Hey, we don't do that. And I was like, oh, I was about to join in. But you know, what culture does is it tells people what's acceptable and what's not. And that wasn't written on the wall that, hey, we don't do that here, but that was just what's the feeling and what's, you know, what you're supposed to do if you're part of that team. Culture can be both positive and negative. I think sometimes when we hear culture, we're like, oh yeah, you know, and we associate it with what we would like to see. But the fact is there's a lot of negative cultures that people have in their business. And it's typically in businesses that aren't focused on what the culture is. You know, you can have positive culture, phone jam, right? Meeting attendance. It's the culture, Champions Club. That was one of the cultures that we had, or behaviors that were in line with the cultures, was, hey, Champions Club, it's what we do. Negative could be cutting corners, punctuality. I've seen that in a lot of offices, some of my offices in the past, that a negative culture was punctuality. Third thing is manage it or it'll manage you. One thing that I've found over the years is that if I'm not aware and trying to keep my finger on the pulse of what our culture is, it can get away from me over the course of a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. But just like it can get away from me, I can also take it to the next level the course of 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I think about Ben Schemper in the front row. And Ben has lived the district manager opportunity more than anyone I've ever seen in Vector in terms of what he's been able to do traveling this year. And so he's had to battle with this a few times. We were just talking where he's like, yeah, I've been back for a week or whatever. He goes, the first week was essentially getting his culture or his hands back into everything to say, whatever was happening, that's not what we do here. This is what it is. Which leads me to the fourth one, and culture begins with the leader. So again, what culture you set up, positive or negative, it begins with you. A lot of times it's where you're at. Where you're at personally. A lot of our results this year I contribute to I'm in a different place. So it's hard to say that to somebody because I know when I come to SLC, I want very tangible answers. Like, hey, what'd you do here? And so I know when some people ask me, like, what was the difference? I was like, I was a little different. I'm in a better place. That's not the answer that people want to hear. But I'm going to walk you through what my path has been, if you guys are okay with this. 2006, I opened as a new DM. Came from Kevin Hanna's office. I was pilot sales manager, but didn't really have a lot of trainings and everything under my belt. The one thing I did have from Kevin was understanding of how to be a recruiting machine. So we recruited a lot of people. Our productivity was under $1,000, but we did a lot of business because I actually launched more sales reps my first new DM summer in a smaller territory than I've ever done since. And the culture was amazing. It was electric. You walk into the office, everyone loved it. And what I found, though, from that was the culture simply was me. Because I was there working how many hours, I was able to control the culture because it was me. There was an opportunity. I wasn't out of the office for a week at a time or 3 days. I was there. And by the way, I loved it. So I wasn't a slave to my office. I was there all the time because I enjoyed it. I will say I didn't necessarily know what I was doing, but I was figuring it out through two things, energy and personality. Now, I'm not saying that my personality was right, but I allowed my personality to fill my office, and that was right. And then I had tons of energy and excitement for what I was doing. I'm skipping 2007, 2008. Those are my DM years. I grew just enough each year. Those of you guys that remember the growth bonuses, I grew enough each year to grow, but just not enough to get the growth bonus. It was like 20% was the bonus. I'd come in at 18. Yeah, right? I don't know if you guys know, but there's no growth bonus this year. The quantums are much better, other than the year that you go from 700 to 1.6. But all right. 2009. I love the pay structure, Bruce. Moved to Omaha. I got the opportunity to get promoted pretty quickly in my years as a district manager. And they said, you want to move to Omaha? I was like, move me wherever. I want to get promoted. And so I went to Omaha, Nebraska. And I was excited because I came from a territory that was 350,000. I moved to Omaha. A lot of you guys aren't probably familiar with the size of Omaha. But it's a solid territory. And to me, the old manager that was there, I found this out from speaking with the receptionist because I took some of their receptionists, is I came out, I was like, we're going to kill it. This territory is awesome. We're going to do $1 million for sure. My biggest year, by the way, was 690 before I got promoted to division manager, division coordinator. And they're like, I thought that the territory wasn't big enough. I'm like, what are you talking about? And they said, blank manager used to say that it wasn't big enough to do $1 million. I was like, absolutely not. This is plenty large to do over $1 million. And just that initial conversation told me, the way that we look at our territories makes such a difference. 2009 was amazing. It was everything that I signed up for in Vector and more. And our team was amazing. We had such great people. It was myself and a pilot, and that was it. So we didn't have a huge sales staff. We had a $690,000 summer. So I did in that summer what I did the previous year. We had 6 branches go out and do $800,000. Everything seemed easy. I showed up to SLC like I had made it. Showed up to this event like, oh, this was awesome. This is so easy. But what I will tell you is I got really good at doing the same stuff. So when I was creating my message, I was describing, I wrote down, I became more skilled. And I don't actually believe that I became more skilled. I just got really good at doing the same stuff over and over again. And the reason that I'm spending a moment to explain this more is because skill, yes, is doing repetition, getting good at something, but if the thing that you're doing isn't necessarily the right thing to begin with, then it doesn't mean that you're developing the right skill. I wasn't doing things wrong, just not to the level that I could. 2009, we did $1 million, but I again exchanged all of my energy for that CPO. So what I mean by this is it was like I was a new DM, but again, I loved it. It wasn't because I had to, it was because I enjoyed it. It was just me. I moved out to Omaha by myself. What else was I going to do? I was excited about conquering the world. And I did at that time, though, say to myself, I don't think I would want to be on the other end of this relationship if I was in a significant relationship. And so it became, a little bit more aware. I became more aware that some things needed to change in terms of, creating a little bit more lifestyle for myself. And I entered into a relationship in 2009. 2010, this was the worst year of my life. Oh, not because of the relationship. Great. She wanted to watch this, but you got that Blur app, Amar, if you could do that. 2010. This was my worst year, but then after it happened was my best year. And, I heard from people like, oh, you have to have your growing pains, that kind of stuff. I was like, whatever. My career in Vector up to that point had been pretty continuous. It was each year I was growing. I got promoted. I was like, this is great. Because 2009 was so great, it set me up for the wrong thinking, if you will, for 2010. What I thought it took to be successful, I was incorrect. And so what happened is I didn't prepare the way that I needed to. I was like, man, second year here, I've got development. This is going to be great. My branches, they're going to go out and kill it. What happened in 2010, we did I think it was $750,000, which, by the way, second best year, but coming from $1 million, second year in the territory, it felt like I completely failed. Branches, our branches went from, I think we were number 1 or 2 in branch average my first year in Storm to one of the last. And that, to me, was actually the most difficult thing for me to deal with. I love people. I love relationship building, and that's why I love Vector. And so when I saw these students go out and not do well, and I know that I played a large part in it, I questioned a lot that summer about was I in the correct place for me. And so what happened in 2010, throughout the entire summer, I was constantly thinking, have I hit my peak? Did I peak last year? Should I still be here? If I was somewhere else, what would my experience be right now? And I at least waited till the end of the summer. I said, I'm committed, obviously. I've got to follow this thing through. And at the end of the summer, when the dust settled and I wasn't as emotional and I was able to make more logical decisions, I said, you know what, this is the place. And actually, I went through an exercise and I said, what are the things that I have loved about Vector over the course of 2006 to 2009? And are those things still true? And what have I disliked about this year? And everything I disliked about that year was my situation. It had nothing to do with what the job was. And to me, that said, you know what, I'm still in the right place. I need to figure this out. So I went to SLC with my tail between my legs. Totally different from 2009 to 2010. And I was very humbled by 2010. And I went to SLC with a list of people, questions. I was like, I got to get some stuff out of this. Everyone that I talked to, they had one theme, which was growth. Everybody was growing. And I don't mean business. I mean, they were doing things to grow themselves personally. So I left SLC saying, I've got to do something that has to do with growth. Now, I will say 2011, 2012, these are my growth years. I'm still growing. But these are my growth years. I didn't know, if a lot of you have heard people say, oh, you've got to grow personally, I didn't know what that looked like. So in other words, I came home from SLC like, I gotta grow, but I just didn't really know, what does that look like? What does that mean? So 2011 was a lot more figuring it out for me. In 2012, I hit my stride with my personal growth. So I began reading a little bit more. I began getting more physically active, doing things that I got energy from, competing. I figured out I needed to do things outside of the office that were competitive, basketball, whatever. And I found myself a little bit more during 2011. 2012, I had it down to a science. Every morning, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'd play basketball at 5:30 with a group of guys, and I'd read from 7 to 8, and I'd work at 8. I felt great. My people could feel it. My results showed. And so 2013, by the way, it's been a buildup of what's been happening, I believe, over the last few years. So I grew myself over these years, and I grew my self-discipline, which I think is one of the biggest things. I also, I paid for a coach. I didn't know what it was like. I was like, well, I hear other people getting coached. I'm going to get coached. So I coached with Mike Muriel. He was a fellow DVM at that time. And Bruce announced that he was going to be our region manager. I cornered him in the bathroom and said, do I get a refund now? He said no. 2013. We're at just shy of 1.7 million, $400,000 campaign one, $1.16 million summer. More All-American scholarship winners than I've ever had. We've got a representative that is on pace to win the Silver Cup, a representative that I left back in Omaha that is on pace for a Silver Cup as well. I've hit my savings goal for the year right now, as it stands, without the year-end bonus. And this is the thing I think is most important to mention. I've worked less hours, campaign one and campaign two, than any other year to date. One of my objectives, and this was heavily pushed from my girl from Brooklyn, was, she was constantly wanting more time, which apparently is what you're supposed to do in a relationship, right? And so my focus wasn't, I can't go to a 40, I didn't know how to do it. So campaign one, 2011, I said, I need to figure out a way to work less hours than campaign one, 2010, but not at the sacrifice of CPO. I need to actually do more business, and I think I can figure it out. And it worked. And then campaign two, I did the same thing, and campaign three, and campaign one. And so all I've done is compared it to the previous year and said, how can I figure out to be more effective? So what happened in the result? I've grown more people. I've become way more focused on the job when I'm there. And I've also developed the ability to shut off if I need to, which has been the most difficult thing for me to learn how to do. Our culture in our office this year was described by 3 things. What was really interesting, I was excited about this. I was a little nervous. I'm talking on culture. Let me poll the individuals that had the biggest role in my office this year. So I polled them and said, what was the culture? And luckily, it all lined up with this. It would totally ruin my talk if they were mentioning other things. But they all mentioned growth, dreams, and work. And they mentioned work, though, in a light that wasn't like, oh, it was work. We were working all the time. They mentioned the amount or the effort that was put forward. Growth, to me, was get to the next level. Pursue your dreams, where that came from, was Matthew Kelly. Thank you, Bruce and Al, for deciding to bring Matthew Kelly in. I'd read his book a few times. I read it again before I moved, and for some reason, the 3rd time that I read it this last fall, things clicked. I said, that's the atmosphere and culture that I want in my business. How do I set that up? And work ethic just made sense because that's what gets results. So here are the big differences. I've got 4 of them for you. Number 1 was I had clarity on my desired culture. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. Ben did a great job of covering a lot of that yesterday. Know your why. Greg mentioned that as well yesterday. But this was the first year ever that I could tell you what the culture was going to be before my year started. I knew exactly, the office that I'm going to run, my organization, will be a culture focused on growth, dreams, and work ethic. And I knew it, so did everybody else. The second thing is the desired culture was something that I desired for myself. Greg also mentioned this yesterday. Be the example that you want others to follow. The third thing is that I was committed to impacting the culture on a daily basis, not just results. So when I came to the office on a daily basis, when I got started, I didn't say to myself, oh, I got to just create demos and recruits today. Demos, recruits, demos, recruits. It wasn't that. It was actually, hey, I need to affect demos, recruits, and what else can I do to make sure that the culture is progressing it the way that I want it to? So what does that mean? I had things in my schedule. Every meeting, we would talk about dreams. Every meeting. I didn't know how I was going to implement this dream thing into the office. It's still forming, just so everybody's aware. It's not, we don't have a systemized approach to it yet. But what I did is I said, hey, you know what? As long as I'm living it and I'm talking about it every single meeting and opportunity I get, they're going to be exposed to it, and they're going to start thinking that way as well. We started doing dream PCs. You want to have fun in a PC, that's awesome. I did a dream PC with my girlfriend first. We had a 4-hour dreams planning session to start off 2013. We went to an art museum, sat around, and we shared our goals, our dreams list. And then we found 6 to 12 that we were committed to hitting in the year 2013. And so when I say that I'm in a different place, it's because I know my why. My why isn't to build a business, to be number one. My why is attached to all these dreams I'm trying to check off my list. And I'll tell you what, it makes working so much easier. It makes finding the energy or the extra oomph to do something when you don't want to do it, it makes it so much easier. And so I started crossing off my dreams. And then what I did is I'd share it. I'd tell everybody, hey, by the way, it wasn't to boast or to brag, but it was to get them to understand that, hey, this is what we do is we accomplish dreams. We have a dream board in our office with pictures of what people want to get done, with their name on it and a date. And what was cool is I started doing this with some of our managers, loosely, by the way. There wasn't much of a program, but I had people saying, hey, when am I going to get mine? I was like, oh yeah, we've got to do that. My pilot sales manager for this year, his dream was, hey, I want to propose to my girlfriend at the time, and I want to go to Spain. So we figured out a way for him in the schedule to leave in April, and I helped him with a savings plan over the months of January, February, and March. He booked tickets for those two. They went to Spain. He proposed on the coast, and she said yes. How about that for a pretty sweet story to get people excited about dreams? And so my pilot is on board. Our office is on board with the dreams. And then repetition. Because I'm living it, I don't forget to promote it. Anybody here, and I'm assuming everybody can say yes to this, promoted a culture like, hey, here's what it's going to be like in our organization, and then like 3 weeks later you forget about it? I've done that for years. This year it hasn't happened. Why hasn't it happened? Because I'm living these things. So I could totally forget, and through regular conversation of me coaching my individuals and my team and my managers, these things get brought up. So I don't forget. 2013 was an awesome year. I committed to 52 date nights with my girlfriends, taking our relationship to an amazing place. That was in Italy. Thanks, Vector. Got a boat. Haven't figured out how to wear the life jackets yet. I joined a boat club. One of the dreams that I had is I wanted to get a boat, and I figured out a way to do it for a pretty awesome deal. Created the best team that I've ever had. I'm on pace I'm not going to go through all the dreams that I've been able to accomplish, but it's been a pretty awesome feeling being able to cross these things off. One of the things I've wanted to do is be engaged in my girlfriend's dreams. And she got a yoga studio literally out of the blue. One of her dreams was, I want to own a yoga studio. So we had a plan, a grand opening date, mid-August. And this is not exaggeration. It just fell into her lap. I've never heard of somebody getting a business for no money down and a payment schedule that's pay us back when you can. She brought this to me in a contract and said, look, it's real. I gave it to some friends of mine that are lawyers, and they're like, it's real. And things have fallen in line because we're putting it out there. We're saying these are the things that we want to get done. When people have hope for the future, they have power in the present. You guys have heard this quote numerous times, different ways. And I can tell you for our representatives, our FSMs we do these dream things with as well. We say, hey, what do you want to do? We've got a FSM student that wants to go heli-skiing in Canada. He's 21 years old, and he's got a savings plan. So doing demos is pretty easy to that guy. Sharing his goals with his customers is pretty exciting for him as well. I'm going to roll through these things quickly. Here's what I've learned in the process. Your people are a reflection of you. If you aren't happy with your people, don't blame your people. Oh, I complained so much about my people in 2010 when things weren't going well. They're weak. They whine all the time. They're this. I'm good. But man, my people, I just need new ones. That didn't work. Culture, second thing that I've learned in the process. These are things that I did not know coming into the year that I've found out. Culture can change quickly. Anybody recognize this picture? This guy made the news, Matt Labrum. High school football coach in Utah. He wasn't happy with his team's culture, so he changed it like that. He suspended every player on the team. He caught wind that they were bullying in school, that their grades weren't up, they weren't respectful, they weren't on time, so he just said, screw it, you guys can't have the luxury of doing this, so until you are the types of people that we have on our team, we don't have a team. It's a pretty cool story. Culture can change quickly. Why I put that up, by the way, do not just go home and say, hand in your sample kits. I just want to make sure everybody's got that. If your culture's not where you want it to be, I want you to understand this, though. When you go home, your team is the same as when you left it. So you're different, right? You're ready to run through a wall when you get home. Your team wasn't here. It's not going to change like that, but through constant pushing of you of what your new culture is, it can change quickly. Another thing that I learned is it doesn't need to be you all the time. If you create a strong culture, right, strong current in your office, it operates while you're not there. Take Kathy's December last year, out of the country in a $225,000 December to hit $2 million. That's pretty awesome. It doesn't have to be you all the time. I polled my representatives, asked what were the biggest things that made a difference on their summer, and they said the number one things were peers and managers. It was conversations from their peers that influenced it. And this was the biggest revelation that I've had, is that you can be you and get the numbers that you want. I'd struggle with this forever. Hey, the only people that I know that had done $1 million were Mike Muriel. I can't be like Mike. Brandon Venning, all of his reps showed up in shirts and ties. I can't be that. My office is weird, it's fun, we got a hat bin, it's like a playground. And I wanted to do it my way, and I finally decided that, hey, I'm just gonna be me, and I'm gonna see what happens. $2 million office. I didn't think it was gonna happen this year. It is on my dreams list, which I'm excited to cross off this year as well. And the last thing that I wanna say is I wanna thank you guys, because on my dreams list, I shared this with Trent last year, was I wanna speak at SLC. So I appreciate you guys being a part of crossing off a dream. Thanks a lot.
And we go back, this